The middle of Clemson's defense loses two key pieces. Can they get better? Will they be able to sustain that? We're going to dive in. So the first of those is, of course, Barrett Carter. Barrett Carter, the senior, he led the team in tackles, tied with Wade Woodaz with 82 tackles. He had 10.5 tackles for loss. He had 3.5 sacks, and he is off to the NFL. How does Clemson replace him? Well, I think the first thing you have to acknowledge is that Wade Woodaz was Clemson's best linebacker last season. That feels almost blasphemous to say. Wade Woodaz was the team's top linebacker by PFF, and he was the number 10 linebacker in all of the ACC. And he returns for a senior season, and you got to think he's getting better every year. If things stay on pace, you got to think senior Wade Woodaz is better than junior Wade Woodaz. So that's part of how you replace the production and quality and leadership of Barrett Carter. Wade Woodaz is another year experienced, another year better. So that's part of it. So one of the starting linebackers is a guy you trust a lot, and he's a true senior, Wade Woodaz. Now, alongside Wade Woodaz, who's going to replace Barrett Carter is rising sophomore Sammy Brown, all-world 5-star from Georgia, from the Commerce area of Georgia. Now, he looks to take his next step. He had a lot of talk last year, especially being pulled from that South Carolina game and the defense sort of blowing it without him, which is a reflection on the coach, which we'll talk about in a second. But if you look at his numbers, they're only okay. The PFF doesn't love him, particularly as a run stopper. Now, as a pass rusher, he was awesome. He had 11.5 tackles for loss. He had 5 sacks, doing that in fewer snaps than Carter and Woodaz. He actually had the most sacks of any linebacker, second most on the team besides TJ Parker, of course. So the question is, does he take a big leap? And you got to think with a year of experience, with presumably better coaching from Tom Allen, the new defensive coordinator, from Ben Boulware and Thomas Allen at the position coach level, perhaps the experience he's gained, perhaps a simplified scheme, which we've heard about from Tom Allen, and perhaps better coaching, which, yet to be seen, he could take a big step. So the question is a sophomore, well-coached Sammy Brown, can he be better than Barrett Carter? We'll find out. But that sounds like a pretty good duo so far. But what about the depth? You do lose Barrett Carter. You did have Sammy Brown last year, although as a true freshman. So is the depth just decimated, right? That's a legitimate question. Well, I think it might have been, but Clemson pivots, kind of moves away from what they've always done, which is only use the portal for, guys who aren't really going to play, backup fourth string quarterbacks. They use the portal and they get a guy who could play a notable role, and that's Jeremiah Alexander. Jeremiah Alexander was actually the number 1 overall edge rusher in the 2022 recruiting class. So that's pretty notable. Now, 3 years at Alabama, he didn't play a whole lot. So that's also notable. We have to acknowledge that whatever was going on there, he didn't get any trouble, at least not publicly, but he wasn't good enough to play there. So that's always the kind of push and pull with a portal. You're either getting guys who weren't good enough to play at great schools like Alabama, or guys who did play and were really good, but did it at schools like Middle Tennessee State, where you're not sure how it's going to translate. That's always the question with a portal. And in this case, we got a guy with a great deal of upside, but it was untapped at Alabama. So can they get in? Can they tap that here at Clemson? I think our returns so far are very positive. I think he'll be kind of the will linebacker backup for Sammy Brown. And maybe there's some situations like a 4-3, like a true 4-3, where he could be a pass rusher, or help out and have 3 linebackers to stop the run instead of a nickel. So I think those are the 3 names that to me jump out as the 3 most important, but there's more to get into, which we'll jump into in just a second. Hey, if you enjoyed this content, help out this channel by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Subscribing costs you nothing, obligates you to nothing, but it helps boost this video up in your feed and other people's feeds, helps it grow, helps me keep this from being cluttered with ads. We just have our one sponsor, Ready Vets, who really helps us out. So if you could do that, it would help out the channel a great deal. I really appreciate it. One guy I really like that doesn't get as much talk or playing time from the coaches is, I think maybe he should this year at least, is Jamal Anderson. A little bit smaller of a linebacker at 215 pounds, about like 20 pounds lighter than a lot of the guys we've talked about so far. But he's really impressed me in the limited sample sizes we've seen, particularly the spring games. Can they get him more snaps? He's a guy, could he play some nickel? And first, we'll look at linebacker. So we've talked about Wade Woodaz, Sammy Brown, and then Jamal Anderson slots in. Is he backing up Wade Woodaz with Jeremiah Alexander behind Sammy Brown? I think that's one possibility. What about D. Creighton and Kobe McLeod? D. Creighton actually played over 150 snaps last year, but they weren't, at least according to PFF, the most productive snaps in the world. He struggled at times. I think it was against Pittsburgh. He got picked on a little bit. Meanwhile, Kobe McLeod, he was very, very limited. Only played about 20 snaps, tore his ACL. The year prior, he had a PFF grade of 75. So Kobe McLeod, as I think it was a redshirt year, but a redshirt sophomore, pretty good. So is he fully healthy? Can he get back and be a really good depth guy? Because that would be a big boon to the depth of this position group. Beyond them, you're looking at guys coming off redshirt seasons. Two redshirt freshmen, CJ Cooper-Taylor Jr. and Drew Woodaz. I don't think they play a ton. And then Logan Anderson, a true freshman who tore his ACL, so I don't think he plays much. I think he's a redshirt candidate. But with Woodaz and Brown, that's a great starting duo. And then Jamal Anderson and Jeremiah Alexander, I think, is a great backup. D. Creighton, opportunity to grow and get better. I mean, I think it's pretty normal to expect younger players to progress. So I think he's a candidate for that. And Kobe McLeod, if he's healthy, we've seen him be good before. But then let's get to nickel, as I was mentioning before. A couple names come to mind. Shelton Lewis, a lot of people are penciling him in. He's really like a true cornerback. Not last season, but the year before. He played more true cornerback and was quite good. Then last season, he played more nickel and really struggled. He's not a small guy by normal standards, but by linebacker standards, he's 5'11", 185. So he's a lot smaller than the other guys we've talked about. In true like dime or nickel situations where you really feel that they are going to pass, maybe that's fine. But I don't know if as much as they struggled to stop the run, I don't know how great you feel about having kind of less size out there. But I think he's a guy who could really have a bounce back year. Either last year was him learning the nickel and this year he'll be great at it, or nickel's not a good fit for him and he should just be more depth at cornerback. We'll talk about him in another position video. Ronan Hannafin's the interesting one. He's actually 6'3", 215. He's a big guy. Built, I guess that's kind of like Jamal Anderson, also 215. One of those two I'd really love to see be the nickel. Jamal Anderson we had on the last slide, or Ronan Hannafin here. Hannafin, he's actually great on special teams. He played some and was decent as a nickel last year, but he actually wasn't very good in stopping the run, and that's where we need to see him be a bit better. He was, of course, a wide receiver coming to Clemson, so he's already a junior. He didn't redshirt because he's been so good on special teams, but now he could find himself in a role as a nickel. I don't really see him as an outside cornerback. I see Shelton Lewis as a guy who'd be a better fit for that. So one of those two being the nickel would be great. Otherwise, I really like Jamal Lewis, who I listed as a true in the linebacker group. But those are the three you really want. I think what you don't want is Khalil Barnes at nickel, not because he can't do it, but because that really eats your depth at safety, where Clemson has to replace R.J. Mickens. I thought R.J. Mickens, the most underrated player on Clemson. So already having to replace R.J. Mickens, and then if you pull Barnes to nickel, your safety is really thin. I mean, you've got Kylon Griffin and Tyler Venables and not much else. At that point, maybe Ricardo Jones, and you really, really need Ricardo Jones to be a star, capable of being a starter as a redshirt freshman, if that's the case. So ideally, Khalil Barnes is a safety, and you can get one of Shelton Lewis, Ronan Hannafin, or perhaps Jamal Anderson shifting over and being kind of the Sam linebacker. I like him. I like one of those three to work out, and if that happens, I think Clemson's whole defense sets up much more advantageously, and you're not making any of your position groups too thin. Maybe the most notable thing, Wes Goodwin is off to Oklahoma. Clemson has a new defensive coordinator, and with that, also a new linebackers coach. Ben Boulware comes in, obviously a Clemson legend. And I feel a little hypocritical here because I've been criticizing, or I had criticized years ago, hiring former players who didn't have experience, who were friends of the coaching staff. getting jobs. And that's a little bit of what this is. However, it's somewhat different in that I think, it's a little bit more like CJ Spiller, and it's a true legend. I think Ben Boulware, the energy he brings and the credibility he brings helps. So that's part one of it. But also with Tom Allen, he's the DC and would have been the linebackers coach, but they've decided to pull him off the recruiting trail, let him be purely sort of the head coach of the defense, not give him a position. And that maybe takes a little bit of pressure off of this specific linebackers coach. You also have his son, Thomas Allen, sort of not officially, but sort of like a co-linebackers coach. All early returns, again, this is kind of PR, but from what we've heard, Ben Boulware is doing great. I'm biased. He's my favorite Clemson player, maybe of all time, him and Taj Boyd. So I admit my bias, but I kind of like it. And we're going to see, because I think the coaching could go a long way in helping them stop the run better. I mean, first blame obviously goes to the defensive ends, who I thought were pretty bad last year. But linebackers have to take some of that slack as well, pick up some of that slack. It's not all on defensive end. So I think this is an area where coaching could make a big difference. But overall, when I look at this group, I see two starters I feel good about. Simi Brown is a rising star. Wade Woodaz kind of already is a star, 10th in PFF grades in the ACC last year. I love the Jeremiah Alexander move. I know he didn't make a big impact at Alabama, but he's got that top recruit pedigree. So you're just going to bet on upside. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. I mean, with 105 scholarships now, with the house deal settled, I think it's okay to take some upside shots. Jeremiah Alexander is the quintessential upside shot. And then I love Jamal Anderson. I really hope he could see more playing time this year. And Kobe McLeod's another guy, if he's healthy, he can contribute. So that's not that thin. That's a pretty strong linebacker room. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video. It helps a lot. I appreciate it. And as always, go Tigers.